I'm going to call this meeting of the Plan Commission to order. Madam Secretary, could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ackerson, Ms. Bindum, Mr. Fell,
Here.
Mr. Fitch,
Here.
Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Otto, Mr. Storr,
Here.
Mr. Trail, Mr. Turner.
We do have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda? The minutes. We look at the minutes. The May 19th, 2016 regular meeting of the Plan Commission. Do you have any motions regarding the minutes?
You might want to point out that they were revised.
These were revised, and so hopefully city staff left a revised version. It was available on the website. Revisions are highlighted in yellow. It's essentially just additional details. Motion by Mr. Turner. Second by Mr. Trail. We'll do this on a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The minutes are approved. Do we have any communications?
There are a number of emails received in reference to the case, which later you'll announce has been withdrawn, including that letter of withdrawal. We'll note those for the minutes, or in the minutes for the next meeting.
Great, thank you very much. There was one of the communications she refers to now is regarding continued public hearing, plan cases number 2276, PUD 16, and 2277 PUD 16. We have a note from Chris Saunders of Vision Housing LLC that the application has been withdrawn. So that case is terminated. We do not have any old business. We do have a new public hearing. We've got a request by Insight RE Inc. on behalf of a PI Tower Development LLC for a special use permit to construct a 90-foot monopole tower with antennas and a telecommunications equipment enclosure at 2000 North Cunningham Avenue in Urbana, Illinois. Let the record reflect that Mr. Ackerson is here.
Nice day for evening walk.
It is. You took Mr. Hopkins' spices. Oh, he usually gets here about 30 seconds early. All right. Whenever you are ready, Mr. Marks.
Just wanted to make note that some of the supplemental materials that were passed out include a letter specifying the structural integrity of the proposed tower, as well as a slightly updated site plan just specifying a separation distance from Cunningham Avenue to the west, which one of the members of the commission had requested, as well as a more slightly different survey as well. That was in response to an inquiry by a member just asking about those bits of information. So the following is a request by Insight RE Incorporated on behalf of PT Tower Development LLC for a special use permit to construct a 95-foot monopole telecommunications tower with antennas and a telecommunications equipment enclosure at 2000 North Cunningham Avenue in Urbana, Illinois. The subject property is zoned B3. It's in the northern part of the city, slightly northeast, located at the intersection of Cunningham Avenue and Interstate 74. It is zoned B3. It is adjacent to county properties to the east and to the south, so it's on the border of the city. To the east, those properties are zoned, I believe they're zoned county, under the county designation of R3, and to the south that is zoned so R4 and R3, and B4 as well to the south. There is a hotel located on the 1906 property. To the east are condominiums that are within the Champaign County, but not within the city. There's Cunningham Avenue to the west, and directly across the street is a hotel conference center, Eastland Suites. I believe there's a motorcycle repair shop and a restaurant a little further west than that. Most of that property is Zone B3. The properties that are within the city, kind of directly south, kind of circling around that hotel, which is the county parcel, is also Zone B3. Those are mixed-use properties, offices, etc. And basically to the north is mostly the interchange of Cunningham Avenue and Interstate 74. The future zoning designation for this area is regional business. To the east, the unincorporated part is zoned multifamily residential. And then to the south, that is zoned community business. Across the road is also zoned regional business as well. So before we present the details of the tower itself, we'll briefly go over the requirements in the zoning ordinance for a tower. A tower of this height, that's larger than 35 feet but smaller than 250, located on a B3 parcel that is within 250 feet of a residential use or property or structure, is required to seek a special use permit. For a new tower with a brand new antenna, it is required to seek an SUP, as well as it has requirements for justifying the location of a new tower in this area. It requires an inventory of the applicant's existing cellular network, the justification for a location of a tower in this area, as well as the coverage that this tower would provide. And located in the packet, I believe is Exhibit H, the applicant provided an inventory of nearby towers within a 1.5 mile radius, indicating the 3 closest towers, as well as the exhibit before that. The applicant indicated the coverage map and the status of the existing towers within Verizon's network and the location of the tower were it to be installed. It also requires an inventory of surrounding properties within 1,500 feet of the area of buildings over 35 feet or any existing towers. There are no structures that tall within 1,500 feet of the subject property, and there are neither existing cellular towers or structures of that height that would provide the ability to co-locate. The zoning ordinance requires that a tower located on a B3 property within this proximity to residential use, that it maintain a setback to provide a fall radius, a setback of 150% of the tower height. There was an oversight, an error in the drafting of the memorandum that stated 135 feet. That was based off an original calculation of the tower height, but the actual tower itself. But the tower, when included with the antenna and the lightning rod, is actually 95 feet. So if wherever there is a distance of 135 feet stated as the setback distance from the residential use, that should actually be 143.5 feet. And on the site plan, the applicant has indicated a distance of 144 feet away from the property line for the tower's location. So to specify that. So if you see 135 feet anywhere throughout the memorandum, that should actually be 143.5. The staff recommendation, I will just mention ahead of time to indicate the required conditions that we recommended. The tower and equipment conform to the site plan submitted with the application. The access road be paved with an approved surface as defined in the zoning ordinance. That the tower and related equipment be appropriately screened with landscaping and vegetation as required in section 13(1)(R)(7) of the zoning ordinance, subject to the approval of a submitted plan by the zoning administrator. The fourth condition, the design, installation, and operation of the tower shall be in accordance with all applicable city, state, and federal codes, ordinances, and regulations, including those for public health and safety. And the fifth condition, that if the tower is no longer being used, that the applicant shall remove the tower within 180 days. Failure to remove an abandoned tower within 180 days shall be grounds for the city to cause removal of the tower at owner's expense. So the staff recommendation is for approval of the special use permit with those conditions. Mr. Jack Volt is here representing Inside RA, ready to just briefly describe his application and specifics of the monopole tower, and able to answer any questions. I will also be able to answer any questions or specify anything should you have any. So.
Second, Mr. Marks. Before we go any further, I want to remind the plan commissioners that municipalities can regulate the location of cell towers, but we are precluded by federal law from considering the effects of microwave transmissions. So we're not going to be able to ask questions about microwave transmissions or discuss microwave transmissions. That's a federal law. So, any questions for Mr. Marks? No? Yeah, I opened it. Yeah, thank you.
So the packet's still loaded on there.
Do I need to sign in right there?
Yeah, just if you could sign your name and state your name, that would be great.
Yes.
Just scroll up or down.
Okay.
Pages, most of the pages.
Thank you, Mr. Marks. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Jack Volts. I'm here on behalf of PI Tower Development LLC, or Parallel Infrastructure, and Verizon Wireless to petition for the special use permit for a 95-foot monopole cell tower, 2000 North Cunningham Avenue. As Mr. Marks already described, the intention of this tower is to have Verizon Wireless be the anchor tenant, or the first carrier to have antennas on it in a center line of 90 feet. These antennas are strategically placed to fill in the coverage gaps. An exhibit in the staff report shows the, actually I can scroll down. Right here, Exhibit G. So this is a coverage map prepared by Verizon's radio frequency engineers without the site. So as you'll see, Verizon has two antenna sites to the west, one to the east. So coverage around the I-74 and Cunningham Avenue interchange is unreliable. By locating the tower with Verizon's antennas here, you'll see it fills in from unreliable in-vehicle and in-residence to reliable in-residence and in-vehicle coverage. So the antennas will serve the public convenience. They're actually beneficial for public safety. There's better coverage for 911 emergency calls. In locating the tower here, I had to disqualify existing towers and other structures with height to accommodate rooftop co-location. As Chris mentioned, I did an inventory, a FAA tower search for all structures within 1.5 miles. Right here, Exhibit H is a explanation for why all of these structures were unsuitable for co-location. They're either too close to Verizon's existing sites or too far from the area that Verizon wanted to service. Now I submitted a updated site plan, location plan, showing all the setbacks from Cunningham Avenue, I-74, the nearest residential zone parcel, which is to the east in unincorporated Champaign County. The tower and my application show that we have complied with all required setbacks per the zoning and telecommunications ordinance. Now the compound itself, Parallel, will have a 60-foot by 60-foot lease area within which Verizon has a 20-foot by 36-foot lease space for their equipment. There'll be an elevated steel platform for their battery cabinet and equipment cabinets, ice bridge over the top of it to protect that all from falling ice. The entire compound itself is surrounded by a 7-foot barbed wire fence, gate lock access. It is unmanned, except for when technicians need to come out to the site. As stated, the tower is designed to accommodate up to 3 additional carriers, and you can see they called out extra lease spaces for that. So another benefit of locating the tower here is future carriers may co-locate, improving the coverage for customers with all different types of cellular coverage. And as mentioned, my application is recommended for approval with the conditions of paving the access drive and submitting a landscape plan, both of which can easily and fully be complied with by Parallel. I've already broached both of those topics with them, and we're prepared to redesign the site plans for when the time comes to file for a building permit, showing that we will pave the surface following the ordinance and submit that landscaping plan. Are there any questions or concerns that I can address?
Any questions for Mr. Volt?
I have a,
Mr. Trail?
oh.
Sorry.
I got a couple of questions about some of your, Verizon did this testing?
Yeah,
All right.
they're radio frequency engineers.
I'm going to assume that these show only towers that currently have Verizon antennas on them.
Yes.
Are there other towers in this area?
Yes, and that's the list that I submitted. I had mentioned I did a FAA search for all cell towers within 1.5 miles of 2000 North Cunningham. There were 15 in total, 3 of which have Verizon currently on them, 11 of which do not but are too far from this area to provide the adequate service to improve Verizon's coverage. And the 15th is actually this proposed tower. Parallel's already received the appropriate FAA approvals.
So what frequency does this?
PCS, AWS, LTE,
So this represents all frequencies?
all of the frequencies that Verizon's antennas will service or provide coverage for. My apologies.
Well, different frequencies have fairly different characteristics in terms of building penetration and things like that. So when we look at one of these and it says difficulty with building penetration, does that mean the least building penetrating frequency tested didn't reliably penetrate?
All right, so you're asking, like for instance, where it shows the green, the light blue, unreliable in residence. So that is showing that all of Verizon's signals from existing sites will not propagate far enough to
Their-
penetrate through any
Their
existing
CDMA,
structures.
their new LTE, all of their
Yeah.
frequencies equally don't penetrate, or?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay, that seems a little, I assume that only Verizon frequencies in the area were tested? And,
Yes.
Do you have any other carriers who are currently interested in a tower at this location?
No, because without securing the zoning and permits, all of the local approvals that we need to actually build the tower, Parallel can't advertise it to other carriers. It's not guaranteed that the structure will actually be constructed at this point. So Parallel can't, in good faith, advertise this proposed monopole to T-Mobile or AT&T or Sprint or any other carrier.
Yeah, the gist of my questions are just, I'm guessing there's a lot of other, it's like, is this just going to end up being a Verizon tower?
No, that's not the intention.
I realize it's not the intention, but has anyone looked to see whether realistically any of the other characters would be interested in this location? And is this location being set up in essence to carry some of Verizon's older frequencies that may not be around for much longer?
That I cannot speak to. All I can speak to are the proposed loading that's included in the full set of construction drawings that were submitted, which
Okay.
shows 9 proposed antennas. And as I mentioned, AWS, LTE, I think PCS. Those were the three.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Trail. Mr. Fell.
Just a clarification on the site plan, it shows a proposed lease site of 60 by 60. but
Yes, that is Parallel's lease area. That is what we have
Proposed
leased.
PI Tower lease site 60 by 60. Verizon leased area is 20 by 36, and the tower isn't even in that. So is Verizon leasing 60 by 60 or
No.
20 by 36?
Parallel Infrastructure, PI Tower Development LLC, the tower company leases the 60 feet by 60 feet. It's
Okay.
already leased from the underlying landowner. And that is to accommodate additional carriers, as you were inquiring about. You'll see called out on the site plan, there's 3 dotted spaces outlined, and that's built in to support future co-locators' equipment within the compound. So Verizon's 20 by 36 lease area is for their generator, their steel platform upon which their equipment cabinets are located, and then they run their power and fiber from that to the tower itself.
So Verizon doesn't own the tower.
No, Parallel Infrastructure owns the tower. Verizon will be the anchor tenant upon that tower.
You might explain why Verizon wouldn't own this tower.
Verizon is not in the business of owning cell towers. They have minimum actual towers. That's the route in which most carriers are going these days. Tower companies construct and own the towers, and then they lease that vertical real estate to wireless carriers. They put their antennas on it.
Anything further, Mr. Fell?
Well, I do want to ask about the engineering of the tower that lets the top 30 feet fall before the bottom 60 feet. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the way the tower is constructed, as you mentioned, the tip will collapse upon the rest of the tower, which decreases the fall zone radius. These monopoles are designed to, in essence, collapse upon themselves in the event of a severe wind event or earthquake, God forbid.
Regionally, we have to design to a 90-mile-an-hour wind speed, which is what this is designed to, but the base is designed to 10% extra capacity, so if the wind gets to 100 miles an hour, the thing falls over altogether?
If it gets to 100 miles per hour, in this very unlikely event, the upper third of the tower would basically collapse upon the lower part, would almost snap off and fall upon itself. And as that letter attests, there's a 30-foot maximum fall zone radius. So your tower itself is falling within the leased space, Parallel's lease area, the fenced-in compound,
Okay.
in this severe, unlikely event.
Further questions? Mr. Storr? Got it.
Good evening. How deep of a foundation do you anticipate at this for this tower?
It goes down fairly deep, considering the tower is 90 feet to top of steel, 95 feet to the top of the lightning rod. It's not a particularly tall cell tower, but the foundations themselves will go at least 30 feet.
Thank you.
I've got a related question on that, actually. It's an interesting question. Maybe city staff can help. If in the event that you would abandon the tower and have to tear the tower down, what are the requirements for getting rid of the base? I recall on windmills, you had to they had to grind the concrete down some certain number of feet below the surface. I'm just curious. I assume it's part of it.
We want to check the zoning ordinance to be certain
Okay,
in the event of decommissioning the tower. But
great.
If I may add, in other sites I've seen with the PI Tower Development LLC in particular, in ground leases when they lease this real estate from underlying landowners, sometimes in a lease agreement there's a clause put in that they will remove the tower footings to 5, 6, 8 feet below
That's-
grade, so that if there's future development they can build over
Exactly, yeah.
it. So.
Okay. The other question I had is that there's a tree on the property that can contribute to the screening. It looks like it's still on the site plan.
Yeah, I drove right past today. I think the tree you're referring to is in the southeast corner
Yes.
of the parcel. Yeah.
Are you going to leave the tree?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's on the site plan. I just want to make sure.
Thank you, though. I appreciate you pointing that out.
Mr. Storr?
One more question. Getting back to this 144-foot, 1.5 times the height, I noticed that you're pretty darn close to the interstate entrance ramp. I'm glad that the design kind of takes in would allow this to break, about 2/3 of the way up. That's sounds like a good thing. But in the event that we get a tornado or something of that sort, where we can get 100-mile-an-hour wind, you're pretty close to the interstate entrance ramp, and that'd be kind of an emergency entrance exit sort of circumstance.
Mr. Storr, as we just mentioned a few minutes ago, the tower footing goes down pretty deep, and that's another factor preventing such an occurrence as what you just described from happening. Tornado would have to rip the tower from 30 feet out of the ground and pull almost the entirety of this extremely heavy structure over 116 feet. The updated site plan I included shows the distance from the base of the tower to Cunningham Avenue to the west. So, I mean, I know we're speaking in hypotheticals, but that seems to me extremely unlikely, if not impossible.
What about to the north? Is that a longer distance than to the north?
Yeah,
It looks like it. It's at 116 feet to Cunningham, and there's if you brought that line around on a radius, you would be just into that open field.
you're welcome.
Any further questions, Mr. Turner?
I was kind of curious, since I'm not particularly familiar with some of these things. What's a typical lifespan of something such as this? I mean, in terms of usage, and as far as the lease is concerned, you said it's already leased. Is it like a 10-year lease? Is it
I could provide a redacted copy of that lease if you'd like. I could email it to all of you. It's a 30-year lease, 5-year initial term, 5 additional 5-year renewals.
okay. And a typical lifespan for usage? It's hard to predict, of course.
I'll answer your question this way. There's been cell towers since I was a toddler that are still standing.
Sure.
Well, how old are you now? You look at 26.
You know, I didn't shave with the specific intention of making myself look older.
Can't.
but-
Yeah. All right. Any further questions? Mr. Trail?
Just quickly back to the issue of removal. If, in the case of bankruptcy, do they have to post a bond or something?
Yes, it states that in the zoning ordinance, it states that the owner shall post a bond or other surety payable to the city of Urbana equivalent to the cost of demolition or removal of the approved in the event said owner is unable or unwilling to remove and abandon a tenant or tower in conformance with the provisions hereof. So, yeah.
Great.
One other quick question. I have read that that there's been a really large uptick in injuries and deaths among workers working on these towers. Is a monopole, does it have a better safety record than other types of towers, or a worse safety record, or is it cheaper to construct, or?
That's
Why did you
knowledge
choose a
that
monopole as
unfortunately
opposed to
doesn't
some
fall
other
under my purview. I wouldn't be able to quote statistics off the top of my head. What I can say is it'll be constructed, following all OSHA standards, regulations, and once up, unless Verizon or another carrier was installing or taking down, decommissioning their antennas and equipment, it's almost like never that there will actually be maintenance up on the tower itself. Technicians would be more interested with the equipment at grade, like the cabinets, generator, stuff of that nature.
Thank you. Anything further for Mr. Volz? Thank you very much.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Volz.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address the Plan Commission on this case? All right, thank you. In that case, we will close the public comment section of the hearing and go into discussion. Is there any discussion? Are there any motions in lieu of discussion?
The reason I asked some of the questions is, but it seems like to me now there's a lot of churn in the who's got what frequencies, and a lot of new technologies utilizing new frequencies, and they keep announcing that, well, they're going to need fewer towers because the newer technologies can do. I just wonder. It would have been nice to have seen something that sort of looked at all of the towers as opposed to just a Verizon. Since it isn't a Verizon tower. We're putting up, something that can be used by Verizon, but Verizon could drop their lease in, a year or whatever. So I don't have any clue that we have too many, or that we don't have enough, or that this really is a good. I don't have any clue, but I just, wonder if we're going to end up with a lot of towers that are going to have to get taken down before long.
It's an interesting question. One thing that I wanted to ask city staff, in regard to the height, in relation to height of other tall structures around there, I was driving and trying to figure out how tall the tall telephone poles and streetlights on Cunningham Avenue are. 50 feet, maybe on the tall telephone poles?
I know that with a different conversation I had, that the streetlights along Lincoln Avenue, for instance, are somewhere in the 40 to 50 foot range. I'm not familiar with the specifics on Cunningham, but I would guess
They're
that it's
pretty
within
tall,
the.
yeah. So this is going to be, and the telephone poles are another good 10 feet taller than the streetlights. So, but this is going to be 30 feet taller than anything around it, probably. Just for reference. So, all right. Anything further? Can I get a motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Ms. Bynum moves to approve Plan Case 2279SU16 forward to the City Council with a recommendation for approval with the conditions
Yes.
suggested by city staff, seconded by Mr. Ackerson. And we'll do a roll call vote if there's no further discussion. And I think there isn't.
Ms. Bynum?
Yes.
Mr. Fell?
Yes.
Mr. Fitch?
Yes?
Mr. Storr?
Yes.
Mr. Trail?
No.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
And Mr. Ackerson?
Yes.
That motion passes. And it will go to the City Council in
June 20th.
June 20th. All right. Now we have another PUD case on the new public hearings, but apparently this has been withdrawn as well, as the PUD is not needed for the development that's being planned in that case. So we'll move on to, we don't have any new business. Audience participation. Does anybody wish to address the Plan Commission on a matter of interest? Please approach, state your name, and you'll get 5 minutes. I know who you are, but
Well, I'm trying to put an end to my visits.
you're becoming our biggest fan. This is
Betty
we have so
Anderson. It's my background. What can I say? All right. So, what I did. Okay, this is in reference to my concerns about building large buildings, any more buildings in this Lincoln Avenue, Lincoln Busey corridor, around my house. Okay, which is on Oregon and Busey, and all in that in most of Urbana, but in that area in particular. And what I did, because my father's dead, my uncles are dead, and they put in my uncles put in the two sanitary, systems in Urbana and Champaign, and they put that corrugated iron along the, or metal along the boneyard, and they put a lot of sewers in and things like that. But they're not here to tell you what's going on, or to tell me so that I could give you any sort of information from our side, the public side. So what I did was call Burns Clancy, and I ended up talking to a man whose name is Don, who's the vice president of that organization, who actually interned with my uncles back in the 70s. It's kind of interesting. And he confirmed a lot of the things that I had only heard of as a young child. So I had him put together a report, which I gave to Ms. Pearson right before the meeting. And it has this map, and it has some recommendations, and it does confirm my father's discussions with me when we were redoing our house, or my house, that there are undersized water, I think that's called storm sewers and sanitary sewers in the area. They come from 1980 and 1981 reviews. They have some names. They come from a 1992 review by Burns Clancy. And I just want to put that in the record, as well as he also did a review of the many complaints that the residents in the area brought to this commission, okay? That, we have parking issues, we have, all sorts of issues there. The storm basin, or the retention basin under the park, the sort of pseudo park or whatever we were going to have at that location, didn't really have any logistics, and didn't show how it was going to hold the water, release the water, or anything else. So what I did was present that. I want to present that to you. I want it to go into permanent record. I'm going to take it to the next city council meeting on whatever kind of business it's supposed to be, and present that. I want that put into the next, let's see, what do they call it, plan commission. We had a 2005 plan, or whatever that's called.
Comprehensive plan?
Comprehensive plan. And I took the time one evening to read most of it, except the cell phone towers and some couple other things. But it doesn't really have in the comprehensive plan, what are we going to do with the storm? How are we going to build the infrastructure? So I want the infrastructure to be addressed. Okay, I think that's important, unless everybody's going to have sewage in their basement like I did, or water coming up to their front or their side of their house. It's very important to me, and I just wanted to give you an expert opinion on it. So have at it. And it was really, I was impressed. Okay, so.
I suspect that's not easy, so.
Yeah, but it's kind of, but I didn't really, I don't really do all this, email and all this other stuff.
This is very nice. I appreciate it, and we'll definitely have it be part of the record.
So the next time, it may not be Mr. Sanders, it may be another
Sure.
person is going to come and say, I want to build something else. That's fine, but Urbana needs to say, what do you need to address, what are you going to do with these Kohler Avenue and Lincoln Avenue and all these drainage systems? Because they're old.
Yeah.
They're very old. And I don't know, when I listened to the I think it was called I was listening to the budget on the sanitation and the storm sewer department, whatever that's called. And they didn't really address that this year. So I don't know if it's going to be 50 years like it is over in Washington Street in Champaign, where it's been flooding for 54 years. 1962 it was supposed to be repaired, and they're just now getting to it. So I don't really want to have to find out when I'm 87 years old that I'm still having sewage in my basement. All right?
All right.
That's just information for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Does anybody else wish to address the Plan Commission? No?
I'll spare you.
Thank you. Do we have a staff report? We don't have a study session. Therefore, hearing no objections, we're adjourned.